All right, guys, I'm going to start off with our agenda this morning. So, what we're going to be doing is first, we're going to do some theory with Top Sheet. We're going to talk about different aspects, how to use it, different ways to mix, things like that, create colors. Then we will take a little bit of a break. We'll move into the salon, and then I have an activity for us to do. I'm going to put you guys into kind of groups to do the activity so you can work together on the situation. All right? Um, Apparently, I say a lot. But so, have you guys found that you're constantly living in the ends in Top Sheet?
Yeah.
That's where you live. You don't really venture too far from it. You don't try to like adjust it too much. You're like 6 in, 7 in. She's good. Let's roll. So today, I'm going to share with you some information on how to utilize the other tones in the color line to create some different reflections and things like that. I'm Tyler Benitez. I am your Goldwell. What am I?
Educator.
No, I'm not an educator. I am your Goldwell artist. I'm your regional artist. I'm your guys' personal regional artist. So that's a little bit of extra bonus. So we're gonna hit on your ends, how many shades we have, your accurate pigments, and we'll go into your high lip. Let's hope I put these in order. So what Top Sheet has to offer? We have levels 2 through 10. We have the 11 series and the 12 series, and we also have illuminated shades. So those are just parts of this color line that we're going to look at today. So you guys obviously love our cans, right? Our depot system. So the depot system with Goldwell, it's a patented system. You'll never see another system like that. For those of you who have not been to New York, they have it patented. They have it patented for 100 years, so nobody else will be able to do this. Our dispensing system, nobody else will be able to do that. That's what makes us special. That's what makes us unique. It also has the ability to give us 1 can equals 4.2 tubes. So that saves so much room. And it also saves in waste. It saves in savings for the salon. So we get a lot with this depot system. Can anybody tell me, besides our New Yorkers, our head people, what Goldwell was whenever they first came out, whenever they hit the scene? What did we create first? We're actually a perm company. Yeah, so in the 40s, they created perms, and that's where Goldwell started. Then they moved into color and then other products. So a little bit of history. And it was post war Germany that they just came out with perms. Yeah, pretty cool, right? You just what?
I grew a wrinkle in my brain.
A wrinkle in your brain.
Nice, right? Thank you.
Okay, so what does everything mean on our cans? So on our cans, you're going to see a couple different things. You're going to see a number and 2 letters. So this is just going to be basic information that I'm going to share with you guys. We know that this is our level. This is our 100% gray coverage. If it has an N, an NA, or an NN. If you're using an add illuminated shade, you're going to see this symbol. This is going to be our primary color, and this is going to be our secondary background color. Whenever you're looking at your color wheel, if you notice on the inside of the circle, those colors are going to have a brown background. And then the ones on the exterior part of the circle is going to have your beige background. It's going to be a little bit more translucent. That's where you're going to find a lot of our colorant shades, right? Makes sense? So whenever you're looking at these symbols, just remember whenever you see the at symbol with the N, that primarily should be used on its own. We're not going to deviate from those because if you try to mix anything with those, you're going to diminish your gray coverage with the N. Does that make sense? So you're pretty much going to dilute that gray coverage. Do we have any questions about that? No? So top sheet is 1-to-1 mixture. Our standard mixture for a global retouch is going to be 40 mils of color and 40 mils of developer. It's going to process for 30 minutes without heat or 20 minutes with heat. Any questions there?
That's top sheet, right?
Top sheet.
For gray coverage, do you leave it on longer than that, or is 30 minutes like cool for your?
30 minutes is your standard. Right there. We don't have to go to 45 or anything like that. 30 minutes is our standard. Now, whenever we talk about adding heat, we're talking about open air heat, like a ring or something like that, not a dome dryer.
What would a dome dryer do?
A dome dryer blows a bunch of air and heats up all around. They get super hot. You know, you and I used to use the dome dryer. Here, throw them on the dome dryer.
Was that bombs?
I had one in my house, and it would break the whole entire electric in my house.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the power-
Those things are strong
all
now.
The power would go out. Like, I would have to restart the breaker and everything if something else was plugged into the same wall.
So we're going to go to our gray coverage. With our gray coverage, our N's, our NN's, and our NA's are 100% gray coverage. With your gray coverage, you can add your fashion shade. We all seen this in the back. We have it up, we have it posted, we make sure that you know. But if you're up to 30% gray, you're going to use your 15 mils of your natural, your 25 mils of your fashion shade. That's going to help you whenever you're using your reds to make sure that you don't get that super hot root, that huge reflection. Because whenever you're using a red on those white hairs, it's just going to reflect. It's not going to have any filler because you need those fillers to push into that gray hair and then put the red on top of it. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
For your 30 to 60%, it's going to be equal parts. It's going to give you the optimal gray coverage. For your 60 to 100%, it's going to be the reverse from up here. So let's talk about whenever we have different densities of gray coverage. A lot of people have a lot of gray around their face. A lot of people have a lot of gray around their temples and their part and all that good stuff. You can adjust this situation by doing your 100% around the face or your 30 to 60 in the part or just around this area. And if they don't have any gray in the back, you can just use your fashion shade. That's one way that you can utilize that. You can mix up two different mixtures. Now, whenever we're talking about mixing with our NNs, our Ns, NAs, and NNs, and you're creating shades, and you're using reds, you're using the blondes and things like that, just keep in mind that 3 colors is probably about your max. And the reason why is because if we're using 2 or more, or 3 at the max, then you're probably going to add like a little bit of red, a little bit of violet, things like that. But once you get past that 3 mark, you're going to start creating brown. I mean, you're not gonna shift things too much with any more than 3 colors. Yes.
So, let's say we use the 100% coverage formula. If you use that on the whole entire head on areas that do not have as much gray percentage, would it make those areas too brown and too opaque to blend in with the fully covered, like, balanced fashion shade in the front?
In my experience, no. I've not seen that in my
I
experience.
haven't either.
So, yeah, you don't really have to worry about that. Whenever we talk about doing those zonal applications, then that's up to your discretion. I mean, if you're like really concerned about it and you want to customize it for your client, yes, totally do it. But if your client is 100% gray around their temples, you can use this formula all around. It's not going to change. That's why we have the percentages for the N's and the NNs and the NAs. Does that make sense?
I want to ask this question not for
Mhm.
me, but for everybody else.
Yep.
I had a couple questions come up when mixing. Is it okay to put your God, I can't talk. your pure pigments into your 100% gray coverage formula?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So let's talk about, I'm going to touch on pure pigments really quick, and then we're going to go into it a little bit more deeper. Whenever you're mixing pure pigments, of course, we have our base, we have our bowl, and then we have our beaker. In order to get your full depth from your pure pigments, what we suggest is you pull your beaker out, you mix, put your pure pigments in, then mix again. Because when you pull that beaker out, you go color first, then developer, and that developer is meant to sit in that beaker on top of the color to keep the air from getting to it. So you don't want it to oxidize. You're supposed to take the whole system to the chair, pull it out, mix it, because as soon as you start mixing, the timer starts.
I was just about to say that. I thought developer.
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Developer first. Yeah,
Oh
I totally said that backwards.
My God.
We've been doing it wrong the whole time. I'll start over. Developer first, color underneath that, so that the developer protects the color. Yes. Okay, so I completely went dyslexic on you guys. Sorry.
We forgive you,
Yep. It'll happen again. So do we understand our gray coverage?
Yes.
Because you're going to use that here in a little bit.
One thing I think I do struggle on is figuring out what the percentage is.
Me too sometimes.
Like what looks like 100%, what looks like 50 or 20, 30, 60%. Like what are these temples of mine right here? What would you say that is?
Don't we have gray percentage swatches?
We do not. See, I can't answer that question, but will you write that down for me? It's, let me see if I can find the swatches, because I think that's a good idea to have that as a reference in the back.
Yeah.
Like 30, yeah.
How do you figure out the percentages?
So for me, what I'm looking at is the density of the white hairs. If there is like, you're looking at your little square.
Mhm.
If you see just mostly white, then I'm going to go ahead and go for the 100% gray. If you have if it's the even amount of salt and pepper,
Mhm.
then I'm going to go to that 30 to 60. But if I see like 5 or 6, I'm going to stay in this range. So also what you need to take in consideration is the hair texture. If it's extremely coarse and they only have that 30 to 60, I'm probably going to drop down into that 60 to 100 to give it that extra ammonia to give that lift and deposit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's also beneficial to look at the zones, right? That was something that really stumped us in class when we were in New York. We were like, oh, if we were taking in like the entire ratio, the whole head, right? So we were taking in, okay, this is 100% here, and then say through here you got like 25 to 30%. We're like, oh, if we mix that together, it makes like 75%. Like we were trying to ratio it out, when in reality, those zones that are really heavily gray pigmented, or lack of pigment really, that is what you want to go off of instead of the entire kind of head, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So the zones, always keep in mind the zones of the head.
That's
Really,
so
I would go by the temple. You
I feel
know,
like most
whenever
of
the temple
people have
looks
gray,
like,
it's like around their
take
Yeah.
that into
Or, like,
consideration
right on their part.
for the whole thing.
Good to know. There are needs to knows and there are good to knows. These are need to knows. A good to know whenever a client asks you, why am I going gray around my face? Well, those hairs around the face are smaller in diameter, and what happens is as they push their fingers through their hair and part their hair and things like that, those hairs they're made to go through their cycle faster. Each hair follicles, you're only born with a certain amount of melanin. So the more you push your hair back, pull those pieces, beat them up a little bit, you're going to run those out of melanin faster than, say, the hairs in the back.
The first time you told me that blew my mind. I was like, I'm gonna be so gray, bro.
Bro, I am on both sides.
My problem is I've been pulling my hair out. So, we're going to talk about the shades that we have except for our neutrals. But we're going to go into our neutrals. So we have our browns. We have cool chocolates. We have warm chocolates and we have cool cocos. So there are warm and cools in each aspect. We have our blondes, our browns are going to come in brown lids to help us out, right? Whenever you think about your blondes, you're going to go with your gold lids. I totally bought a gold marker to do this with, and it was dry. So, still a little salty about that. So this is where you can create your warm sun-kissed looks and your cool soft blondes, because we all have it in a range. And then our reds, you're going to have the striking, like RRs, the RR Maxes, things like that. And then you're going to have the cools, the RBs, and things of that sort. Okay? Whenever we think about our reds, they all have Cool Protect technology in our cools. So what that does is that keeps that coolness, those violets, those blues that are in that formula, it keeps them in there as long as possible. So whenever you talk about doing a red with your client, just make sure you mention like this has protection in it. They have formulated for this to stay as long as possible, a little bit better than other brands. And obviously, those are going to have red lids. Okay. So I'm missing one somewhere, but it's fine. Okay, so whenever we're talking about our mixtures with our gray coverage, I'm totally guilty, and all my associates know this, that I put a 6N on everybody, right? Everybody gets a 6N, you know? But whenever we're looking at 6N, some people are like, oh, she doesn't want it warm, she wants it cool. I see so many people run at the 6NA. So if you already have 100% gray coverage in your 6NA, why are we, or the 6N, why are we going for the 6NA? Whenever our client says that they don't want a warm brown, they want a cool brown. Can you guys look at your color wheel and tell me a different option that you could mix with somebody who has 30% gray?
I don't understand the question.
Like 6SB. 6
How are you going to cool that 6NN down? What are you going to use to cool it down?
6A.
6A?
Mm-hmm.
Can somebody tell me where 6A lives?
Right
In blue.
In blue? Where does 6NN live?
6 and M is an orange.
In orange?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about, is there a 6BP?
Yeah, that's in purple.
Mm-hmm. So,
You could do BA.
Yeah.
You could do SB.
so you see,
I
whenever
would
we
mix
talk
it
about the
in
undertone, let me hold
together.
this real quick.
Whatever.
Whenever we're talking about adding an undertone, we went for 6A. That is going to live in our K, in our orange area, right? So the 6A is perfect choice for that because it's going to have that warmth from the K that's in there to build that color. So if we step outside of that circle and we go into our 7s, 8s, 9s, where do those live? They have a brown background, but what is their undertone?
Yellow.
Yellow. So that's where we have to be mindful. Anytime anybody comes up to me in the salon and they're asking me about color, that's why you always hear me, where does it live? Because if you add a 6A to a 7NN, what are you going to make?
Green.
Green. They're going to have green hair. What do we know about green? What does that do to light? Sucks it in. It pulls the light in. So whenever you're formulating for your clients, make sure that you're paying close attention to where your base lives. Your N, your NA, your NN. Because that's going to determine what you're going to use to cool down, especially the N and the NN. Does that make better sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to go in and add the NA. Where does the NA live?
The NA's in the blue.
All in the
but
browns
brown.
but blue.
On the browns and the blues. So if you were trying to cool down your 7NN with your 7NA, you're going to make it green. That's going to diminish the shine, the reflection, all that. Okay? So whenever we go into our blondes, let me ask you this question. How many levels of lift does our thin volume give us?
So nothing.
0?
Mm-hmm.
0.
How
0.
many levels of lift? Y'all know.
1, 2, 3.
Calm down. How many levels of lift does the 20 volume lift? 1. And then the 30?
2,
2.
3.
And then 3. So whenever we're using our blondes, those are things that we're going to use into our higher levels, our 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11, 12s, things like that, correct? So if we have somebody who's a 6, that's whenever we have to start doing our color mapping, and we want to take them to an 8, right? 6, 7, 8. That's 3 levels of lift. Color mapping is super important because that's going to determine what developer you use, right? So you need to make sure that you have those numbers readily available in your head. So our next thing that I want to talk about is our reds. Who here has suffered the infamous hot root? Yes, the infamous hot root. Whenever I first started here at the Winchester, I was just fly by night type person. I was like, mix it, let's go. Like, who cares? So I had this client. She was doing like an RB, and I walked back there and I did my normal thing. I put like 7 mils of NN and then the rest RB. Her scalp was so hot. I was like,
Dang.
I need to cool that down. Yeah, I was like, holy crap. Me not knowing any better, what did I do? I glazed her like 3 or 4 times, and it was fine eventually. But then I found out about our gray coverage and our shades. Yeah. It's, oh gosh, who's the lady who takes all the pictures of the food?
Oh, I know who you're talking
You know who I'm talking about. It was her. So she's
Oh my god.
totally cool. Totally cool. She's like, she gets in the mirror, she's like, yeah, that's not right. You're right.
She's like, try again.
So the importance of that. So, but I want to talk to you about adding something else to your reds, because of that reflection that we get whenever we put that fresh red, that we should be color balancing in my eyes at all times. I think that that's very important just to bring it all to a cohesive look. But let's say we have a client who is 60% gray. We use our 20 mils of our NN. We use 20 mils of 6RR Max. You notice that huge reflection. It's like, holy crap, those roots look real nice, but those ends though, right? So obviously you would go in and color balance. Then you pull her out, right? This is a client, we're working on figuring out her situation. That new growth area is super reflective still. What is something that we can add into our formula to stop the reflection? Pure pigments. Green drops. Whenever I was in New York, somebody had done that in their red formula. I was like, not green! But the pure pigment lives on the outside of the hair strand. So it's like taking a piece of colored cellophane and wrapping the hair strand. It's not going, 3 drops isn't going to affect your color formula that much, but it's going to reduce the reflection of light. Does that make sense?
You would recommend that for the root area if it was getting too bright, you thought?
If you have a situation where you're having too much reflection and it looks too bright, you could probably try that on your next go round.
Interesting.
Let's say you're using a high lift color. You have an 11 series and 40 volume, and the rest of her hair looks nice and like shiny, but it looks really bright at that scalp area. Retouch it with that a couple of drops of pure pigment green, because it'll slow down that reflection. It won't get rid of it all the way, but it'll slow down that reflection. Because whenever we're lifting with 40 volume and 11 series, we're going to lift on somebody who's, let's say, 7 or 8 or 9, right? Because 9 times out of 10, we're not going to put like an 11 series on someone's scalp who's a level 2. I mean, it will bring them up to a nice, like, warm, beigey type situation. You'll have to glaze and all that. But to reduce reflection on the scalp situation with an 11 series, you can add those pure pigments to that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Do we have any questions?
I have something cool to say.
Yes.
So yesterday I had this client that came in and she did box dye on herself and it was like pure orange at the
Like
root.
gold.
It was
Just
cray
so
cray, man.
like
It was
Goldilocks
really wild. Like
really
she
close.
was super, super, super orangey and I just could not help myself. Like she came in as like a dry haircut. I was like, listen, we gotta color your hair. Like, we gotta do something here.
We gotta fix
So I learned something cool on the internet recently where, say you got like this super orange situation, right? And obviously the opposite of orange is blue. Well, what happens when you neutralize something? Turns brown. So how are we going to keep that brightness instead of turning it brown? Because I didn't want to turn it brown. I wanted to keep it as bright as possible. But obviously when you cool it down, it goes a little darker. So what this dude showed me online was put gray on it. Put gray with the counteracting color. So what I did, because we obviously don't have like a gray tube, you know, we're not working with fashion color, we're working with permanent top sheet. I actually did this with colorants. So I made gray out of the pure pigments and put that in the formula and it came out perfect. It was gorgeous.
How did you make gray with the pure pigments?
So what I did was I whipped out, I typically like to go for like an 8 SB. I went like straight up level 8 and I did a little bit of 7 NA at the root as well. We melted it down. But on top of that, I mixed the cool violet, the matte green, and the pearl blue and did a few drops of each. And all 3 of those colors combined make gray. So on the outside, we had this really nice light kind of, you know, the dishwater blonde, like the cool toned, really light. It was soft. It was beautiful. It was really nice. And then I went in with like, I did like I did a little 9 CP with like an 8 cool tone. Like I did all fashion tones on the end because the ends were not that bad, but the roots were really bad. And it came out really, really nice. I actually got a picture of it.
I was just gonna say,
You have a
like,
before
I'm trying
picture?
to picture this.
I don't.
That's
But-
me.
I saw the before, I didn't see the
I got all the befores and all the
Like,
afters,
this is how it came
but
out.
none of them match.
This is how it came out. And
Yes.
this doesn't even do it justice. It was cooler in person, but you know,
Yeah, that looks
Cool.
really
way
nice.
better than when she came
yeah,
in.
it was nice. And she was like, "Holy crap!" Like she thought it was gonna be dark as heck, you know. And I was like, "No, you just wait till this blowout happens, dude."
Blowout.
And, yeah.
Yes.
She loved it. She was super happy with it. That's a good way to turn your haircuts into color, you know.
They have bad
Get
box
on the
dye.
fly with it. Yeah, exactly. They're
Mhm.
like, I don't want my hair to look like this. I'm like, me neither. Let's
Yeah, let's do something about it.
Let's fix that.
So she utilized pure pigments. Remember, that is in your toolbox. There, sometimes I feel like they sit there and people don't really explore them. We do have a book that gives you a ratio of what they look like on level. You can add pure pigments into all of your top sheet, your 11 and 12 series. You can add it into brightener. You can also add it in whenever you are using your 11 and 12 series and your blonding cream together. Whenever you're using your blonding cream with your 11 and 12 series, make sure that you are going no more than 50% of your color amount. So if you're using 20 mils of 11N, then you don't want to add any more than 20 mils of blonding cream. Make sense? Those shades aren't going to have a whole lot of control. They're going to do a whole lot of lifting, depending on which developer you use, but there's not going to be a whole lot of control. Pure pigments in those situations are gold. Also, whenever you're in a corrective color situation and you have a client with a band, that's also where you can utilize your 11 and 12 series and your blonding cream. We had a situation the other day where somebody wanted to be highlighted, and I really didn't want to go in with the lightener on her, so instead I used a 12 series in with blonding cream, two equal parts, and 30 volume, and a little bit of pure pigments, and it lifted those those ends up just enough for me.
Wow.
So if you're experiencing somebody with a band and you're doing a corrective color situation, you can take that and pinpoint that band with that, and it'll give you that 45 minutes to apply and all that good stuff. So you have a little bit of extra time to apply. If you're using blonding cream on its own, you have a 15-minute window. That's it. 15 minutes is done.
So
So
what happens when you mix the blonding cream with the 12 series? Does that go up to 45 minutes still because you're using the
still
12
45
series?
minutes.
Okay, so when you're mixing it with that, it's not as complicated, I guess.
Yeah.
Or not as sketchy.
So whenever we're talking about blonding cream in a formula, let's say we don't have any 11 and 12 series. All we have is like a 9G, but you want it to be like an 11G. So you can add your blonding cream, equal parts. What that is going to do is it's going to dilute, not make it a level lighter. It's going to dilute the pigment that is in your color, and it's going to make it appear a shade or a shade and a half lighter.
Interesting.
So you can kind of use it as a clear, but it's going to dilute the control pigment in your formula. Blonding cream is nothing but a bottle of ammonia.
So you can
don't
put
want
it
to put
in
it on
your
the scalp. If you're using it on its own, you want to make sure it's encapsulated in a foil. Any questions about blonding cream?
You can put it in your reds.
You can. You can. I put blonding cream in some reds and have done some experiments. We made a 6RR look like some straight up fire. Like,
Wow.
I was about to say.
I was like, man, I don't even want to touch that thing because it looks like it'll burn you. It was like, it was the most reflective thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, that is crazy. What we did, I think, who did that with me? I don't even
How
know.
long ago was that?
It's been a minute.
It might have been me.
I think it might have been you because we did one with a little bit of blonding cream, and then I think we did two, and then we did
And
one.
then at the end, we were
with-
just like, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of mind blowing for the reds, but you'll notice it doesn't take it a level lighter. It shatters out that pigment a little bit more.
Reflective is a really good way to
Yes,
word
it was
that.
extremely reflective.
When you're mixing blonding cream with stuff like the 9G, like you were talking about, like kind of eliminating the control, do you feel like that brings out that like natural contributing pigment, like underneath? Do you feel like it goes a little hot, or is there enough control to where it doesn't go hot?
Me personally, if you're using like nines,
Because you're using it in a foil, it's a bit different than the roots, right?
it's going to be a bit different on the roots because the roots are more porous. If you're using it in a foil, you're going to encapsulate it, give it a little bit of heat. But with my experience, whenever you're using 9s, 11s, and 12s, I always feel like you have to glaze afterwards because you're working in that orange yellow, pale yellows area. So there's not going to be a whole lot of contributing pigment. Even whenever I've used the I think it's the 12, the 11 B. What was it? The 11 SB or 12 SB. It basically didn't do anything to the yellow. That's why we decided to add some pure pigments and things like that because I already figured it wasn't going to do a whole lot to the yellow. So the pure pigments will give it that cellophane wrap.
Nice.
Do we have any other questions, concerns?
So, say you're mixing blonding cream with the 12 or 11 series. Are you allowed to put that on the scalp? Or is that just foil too?
So, you don't want to go past your 50-50 ratio. Like I said, if you're using 12 mils of your, 20 mils of your 12 series, you can use 20 mils of your blonding cream with your 40 mils of your 40 volume. Perfectly fine to go on the scalp.
Nice. That's cool.
So remember, your pure pigments can go into virtually everything except for gloss tones and lightener.
You'd say that would be a pretty decent alternative to doing like a lightener retouch on the scalp.
We're about to touch on that.
All right.
So we've had a few instances where we have clients come in and there are unicorns. They have natural hair.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to be either a caramel because they're in that like level 2, 3, 4, or they want to be blonde, but they don't have any pigment on their hair, right? So those are our unicorns. I never get those, and I get super jealous whenever you guys do.
I was just like highlighting her hair, but it was so blonde in some areas. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I didn't even need to highlight that area.
So what we can do is instead of grabbing the lightener, what we can do is we can go into our 11 and 12 series, and you have the option of adding your blonding cream to give it a little bit more kick, and you need to determine how light this person wants to be. If she's a natural level 8, 9, 10, 11, that's pretty light. So you can go in with your 2-to-1 because that's what blonding cream is, and our blonding cream, our 11, 12 series they're 2-to-1 mixture. So you can go in with your 40 volume, your color that has whatever little bit of control that you want, and your blonding cream gives you a little bit more time to work. It's going to stop. It's not going to get any further than what you're predicting with your 3 levels. So you don't have to worry about, oh, we got to take it to the bowl, rinse out the back, come back, your neck's wet, everything's good. Would you like some champagne? All that, you have the control and that stuff's working. What I would recommend is just mix a couple small bowls. Just if you have an associate, just have them bring them back forth. I know it takes a little bit of extra time, but you have a little bit more control and you're not having to take the client back and forth to the bowl because the back of the nape it's clear and you can't see it anymore. The oil might come out, but it's light, right? You don't have to worry about that. But whenever you're also using it on somebody who's like a level 3, 4, 5, 6 with 40 volume, that's going to achieve that caramel, that softer. You're going to have some control in it. You can add pure pigments. Like you can do a lot with just color. You don't have to always run for the lightener. You got a question?
What's an example of the formula you would use for, say, like a person that came in, like you said, was like a natural level 7, and she wanted to be like highlighted with that? What would be your formula?
A natural level 7. So the first thing I would tell her is if she insisted no lightener, and I was like, girl, you're under oath. Do you have any color on your hair? People lie under oath too. So first thing I'm going to do is test strand. Because you can't trust nobody. They'd be like, Lexi over here, girl, I got no color on my hair.
They'd be lying.
So they'd be lying. So before you explore that option, do a test strand. Because you may it may lift beautiful all the way to the last 3 inches, but guess what? She don't want a haircut. So what I would probably do is let's say, I'm gonna kind of write it out.
Sorry, I was curious. I was thinking about it.
Where's marker?
Where's
There's that Sharpie right there.
Is this okay to post for you? Am
I
I
don't
allowed
see
to
that.
say that? Like regional?
Oh, as long as it says goldwell artist, it's fine.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure before I post it.
Okay, so our normal is not that. Oh, here's one more. Okay, so our normal retouch application is 80 mils altogether, right? So it's going to be 2-to-1. Let's do. I'm gonna mess up this math just so y'all know. Let's do. Does she have any gray? Are we doing a retouch or are we doing a highlight?
Highlight.
Let's do highlight.
Highlight. All right. So let's start out with. We'll do. What level was she?
7.
All right. So we're gonna do 50 mils of 40 volume, and then so it's 2 to 1. So we're gonna do, let's say, 15 mLs of the what we said she's level 7.
Yes.
We're probably gonna use some 11 SV. So we need to make this 25, so we need 10 mils of blonding cream. So if she's level 7, 8, 9, 10, what's going to be her contributing pigment whenever she gets up to that 10? That pale yellow. We use the SV because it lives in the violet. What pure pigment can we use on top of that?
The violet.
The cool violet to add a little bit of extra control, right? So you're going to do your 50 mils of your 40 volume. I'm so daggone dyslexic. That's unreal. 20 or 15 mils of your 11 SV, 10 mils of your blonding cream. That's going to give you a little extra kick. It's going to add more ammonia to your situation because it's going to do more lifting. But your depositing situation, your SV, you're diluting that violet that's in there, so you need to add it back with your at pure pigments.
Should it be 15 mLs of blonding cream so it equals to 80?
It's 2 to 1. Though.
2 to 1. So 50, what's half of 50?
Oh, okay.
25.
All right.
And then with your 15 and your 10 equals 25, correct?
Yeah.
Bro, that hurt my brain. Okay, so the next thing I wanna wrap this up. Does this help you understand how to utilize your ends, get away from your ends, or add to them to elevate your color formulas?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
Is there anything that anybody particularly took away?
For me, the last bit, because just dealing with the blonding cream and stuff is super interesting to me.
Okay.
So I really like that little tidbit.
So the blonding cream to me is very interesting. Whenever it comes to this situation, adding to your ends, your NNs, and your NAs, it's just something that you got to kind of force yourself to do in my book. Because I mean, everybody's gonna be a 6 NN, but whenever she says, "I see red," okay, give me the color wheel. Then you're gonna add it to it. You're not gonna think about that. The only time you're ever really going to think about adding something to your ends, your NAs, or your NNs is whenever you're working with reds or your blondes. Does that make sense?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so our blonding cream foiling formula there,
Mhm.
how many drops? 3 drops of the cool violet? Like how many based on the...
So there's a book back there for your pure pigments,
Okay,
and it has the levels on one side,
okay,
and then it has on the top how many drops.
okay,
So it'll give you what it'll reflect.
okay.
So
Based
like,
on the level, right?
what's that?
Based on what level?
Yeah,
you're
based
going
on what
for.
level. So I tell you what, there's a max on there. I did not know it was like, was it 2 or 3 pipettes? I was like, holy crap! Me, I'm over here scared with 1 drop.
I
Oh,
know.
that's enough. That's enough.
I know.
You can
Like-
also use your goldwell app. You can
Yeah.
add it to your color, whatever color you pick, and it'll show you what it'll do to your color.
Okay.
So, just remember that where these live, what you can add to it to help your client see a different reflection. Go ahead.
So I got a little bit lost when we were talking about that earlier.
Okay.
Whenever you asked why we wouldn't go for the NA,
Mm-hmm.
and then we all looked at the color wheel. Y'all said something about orange, and I got a little bit lost because I thought we were trying to cool down the formula.
Okay, let me ask you this. So you're going to use a 6 NN on your client.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what your client says it's too gold or it's too red.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say it's going to be too red because that's generally what you're going to hear from a 6 NN
Right.
client.
Mm-hmm.
So it's too red. All right, so you need to add, let's say she is 30 to 60% gray coverage. So you're going to do 20 mils of your 6 NN. What are you going to do with your extra 20 mils to cool it down? Where are you going to go?
So we're at a 7 NN or
No, we're just at a 6. We're
okay.
client wants to be a 6 NN, but she sees red.
All right.
So normally, what we would normally do is we would do our 40 mils of our developer 20 volume,
Mhm.
and then our 40 mils of our NN. But she sees red.
Mhm.
What do we need to add into that formula? Because you have 20 mils, what do you need to add into it to cool it down?
I mean, a cooler shade, but y'all
Look
were
at
talking about
where they live on the color wheel.
the NNs. They live in the orange area.
All right, so what's across from the orange area
Blue.
at a level 6?
Level 6 NA.
6 and 8. Why would you add 6 and 8 to that?
Because it's gonna cool it down.
Okay, you don't need to add 6 and 8 because you already have your gray coverage.
Right.
So you can walk away from that and so we don't have to live in this circle. We can live outside of that circle. So we can go for a 6A.
Yeah.
So instead of using 2 cans of straight up gray coverage
Yeah.
to cool it down, you can just use a 6A.
Okay.
So you don't always have to do, whenever you're cooling something down, you don't have to go for an NA. Because it's almost redundant. You're almost wasting it because you already have your gray coverage.
Right. Right. Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the theme of the class. Instead of going from an NN and then adding an NA, whenever it's gray coverage on top of gray coverage, we can explore the other shades. And like if you wanted to shift it to a even like cooler shade or play with a little bit more, you could do your 40 mils of 20 volume, your 20 mils of your NN, and then add your A, and then come over here and add maybe just a touch of VV in there,
Yeah.
just to give it a different reflection.
Mhm.
Because the best thing about goldwell is it's extremely customizable. So you can be like, well, we're going to make you a custom color, and then whenever they leave, we forget to write it down, and then whenever they come back, they're like, girl, I'll do the same thing. And we're like, all right, got you.
See me in my notes, trying to put it in my notes real quick. You're like, you don't have time for that, but I want to remember sometimes.
If you need to, just carry a little book around.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. I mean, I wouldn't do that actually because I can't spell or write or any of that.
I mean,
But-
I would.
Jot my notes on my client's thing as much as I can possibly remember to. Whether it's after the service, while they're processing, like I try to.
Notes are hard. Just remember, you have your iPad now.
You're a very good note taker.
I try to with my formulas. I want to remember, especially if it's something that's super custom.
Hmm
I try to remember to like get that.
Just remember, we don't need any more than 3 shades.
Yeah.
Because once you start adding, like, there's nowhere else to go on that color wheel whenever you've done your blue and your violet. Next place there's gonna be green. There's not really any green. There's reds and oranges, and that's what she doesn't want. So you don't really need any more than 3 shades. Can somebody tell me why goldwell doesn't really have a whole lot of greens?
Keep my mouth shut.
Because you can make it, can't you? Like you can.
Green is not a natural pigment in hair, so we don't need it, right? But can you make it green?
We were pissed in class about that. We were like, we need green. But then you got the matte,
Yep, you got the green. You have the blue and the yellow.
and it does work.
And you can move it to either side of that green spectrum you want. You can move it to a more blue-green, or you can move it to a warmer green to reflect more light. Absolutely.
So in the conversation that you two were just having,
Mhm.
where you said that we did the NN and then we would find something to cool it down. Well, getting rid of all of that and instead of doing the NN, could you just do the NA?
You could.
Okay, 'cause I wasn't sure
That
like
was
if the
literally
NA
what I
would
was
like
Yeah.
do the same thing or.
All right, let me ask you this. Client walks in. She's like, my hair looks green. Where does NA live?
It's in the blues, the blue browns.
Okay, so let's use this example. Let's go to a 9 or an 8 NA. What's going to be your underlying pigment whenever that hair lifts up?
Like a bluish?
Whenever the hair lifts, because it's got to do two actions. It's got to lift and then it's got to deposit. It's got to be yellow, right? An NA on yellow is going to look what?
Green?
Green, all right?
Okay.
I'm too ashy. It looks muddy.
Okay, so if your client's retouch is wanting to go like a shade lighter, you shouldn't use NA because it would look green. Is that what you're saying?
Hang on, we're getting there. You only have NA on the shelf,
Okay.
but you have all these other tones.
Okay.
So what if you went in and did your we'll keep it that 30-60 situation. You go in, you do your 40 mils of your NA, but she wants it to be just a tad bit warmer. She doesn't want to be red, but she wants it to be a tad bit warmer. So where's my NA? You can shift that a little bit and bring it over to like a, let's see here. You can shift it over and do like an 8 BP. Bring in some of that coolness with that violet so that it doesn't look so dishwatery.
Okay.
So bring that depth too with that level.
Yep. And then you can add maybe a drop or two of a orange pure pigment. Kind of shift it over a little bit
Sure.
because that's how customizable we can be with it. And that's like if you didn't have an N or an NN.
Sure.
So last question about the N and the NNs. Do we know the difference between our single N and our double N?
Double N is more gray coverage or
More pigmented?
No. Short answer, no. The reason why the NN is going to give you a little bit more opaque gray coverage is because it has more ammonia in it. Less ammonia, more ammonia.
Okay.
But they're all 100%.
They're all 100% gray coverage. You may have a little bit of sheerness with the N, and you're probably going to have a little sheerness with the NA because it doesn't have those warm yellow and orange pigments to kind of fill in those gray hairs.
I've noticed that, but just by looking at the swatches,
Mhm.
on our board back
Yep.
there.
And remember your timing. You want to get this on. You want to get it to the chair, then mixture, and then immediately start getting it on. Because if you have somebody who's got a ton of hair, and you've started your gray coverage, you start in front, you work your way to the back, shampoo them, you blow dry them, and you're looking at the back of their neck, and you're like, huh, you got a little bit of a line if they're 100% gray. What you need to think about is in the future is cutting your formula in half. Starting with your, you're going to do your 20 mils of your developer, 20 mils of your NN, separate bowls. And then whenever you're done about halfway through, remix your second bowl because it has a lot more lifetime in it. Start applying again. That makes sense? That'll help you with that line. Will they ever see it? Probably not. But it irritates me.
Yeah, it irritates me too.
So, does that help you on that situation? Okay. What we learned today is we learned about what Top Chic is, how to mix it, ways that we can elevate our mixtures, ways that we can use our 11 and 12 series, and things like that. So, what I have in the salon is Goldwell has come out with unique colors. They come out with colors of the season, and I posted those on boards. And I want you guys to utilize what you learned today in Top Sheet, no colorants, to make these shades the best way you can. I have the formulas for those shades somewhere in the salon, so that whenever you're done, you can see what route that you took and what route that Goldwell took. I'm going to give you a blonde swatch, and I'm going to give you a gray swatch, so that you and your partner can work on it together. All right. So I'm going to give you a number, and there may be one with 3. I'm not sure. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need one more person.
Why'd you get 5?
All right, we're gonna start over. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're gonna be with the 3s.
I'm a 3.
Yep.
Okay, so there's 3 of us.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 3.
Okay.
All right. Okay, so you guys can head on over there. They're already labeled and everything.
1, 2, 3. 3.
Hi, Madison.